I was in the Dharavi slums in Mumbai, which is one of the largest slums in the world, where I was doing some research to understand the effect of toilets, that's latrines, on health outcomes. Now, I was really interested in this topic of toilets for a certain reason. Toilets we've been talking about now for a very long time, and it seems like it's very glamorized. But there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more than just the topic of dignity around it. It really has very clear and direct health outcomes. We're seeing India has one of the highest rates of child mortality in this country due to diarrhea and other waterborne illnesses. Poor sanitation has clear linkages with waterborne illnesses and hence with child mortality. Also really interesting research, some of which has been coming out in various states in the country in relation to the Total Sanitation Campaign and now Swachh Bharat, as well as with some of my work, has tried to look at the effect of toilets on stunting and look at the effect of open defecation on stunting to see how not just lack of nutrition, but your body not being able to absorb enough nutrition has an effect on your child's height as well. This is a very, very important topic and a grave one too, considering India is going to have the highest number of children in the world in just a couple of years. So now let's go back to the Dharavi slums. I started working in the slums where, at first I thought that there's just a lack of toilets. And because there's a lack of toilets, maybe people can't use toilets and hence have poor health outcomes. In fact, in some of my research and in talking to those incredible women, I just realized in a couple of days that there was no lack of toilets here. In fact, the Dharavi slums have more than 451 toilet blocks, with each toilet block having about 32 cubicles, which means about 14,500 toilet cubicles for a population of about 10 lakh people, which means that there were actually more than enough toilets. But most of those toilets were not maintained. Most of these toilets were dirty, they were stinking, people openly defecated outside of those toilets. And in this case, giving another toilet, providing another toilet was not the solution. The problem was that there were not enough toilets. The problem was that the toilets were not being maintained. People didn't care. Again, if you don't use toilets, you can't show health outcomes. You will not have improved health outcomes if you don't use these things. It's not just about providing a toilet, it's also about ensuring its uptake. Now, when we often think about toilets in India, we think that it's too expensive to build a toilet. The poor people in low-income communities can't afford toilets, and hence we have less toilets in this country because we do have a large majority of the population still living below the poverty line. If that was the case, then low-income communities in countries around the world should experience similar things, should also experience high rates of open defecation and have low uptake of toilets. But even just looking at the world map and looking at our neighbors, Bangladesh and Pakistan, Bangladesh has an open defecation rate of 1%. Pakistan, that of 13%. India, that of 44%. 600 million Indians still do not use toilets. As you can see on the world map, it's very concentrated in India. We're not the only low-income country in the world. This has more to do with other things than just cost. It's not just that it's too expensive to build a toilet. It's also that toilets in India is linked to purity and impurity and deeply embedded within our caste system. People of the higher caste don't want to be cleaning the crap out of a toilet because it would demean their stature in society. People of a lower caste don't want to be demeaning their status in society further because they've been demeaned for generations. They want to move up. So if neither caste is actually able to and wants to clean a toilet, then you can't be using a toilet. Giving out a toilet to these people is not going to make them use it, and hence it won't affect their health outcomes. Now let's just try to understand how sanitation success is measured today. We have various levels, so we have various grades in which we move up the ladder in sanitation. So G0, grade 0 is essentially open defecation. It's the cheapest alternative. You have to do nothing but walk to an open defecation site and carry a pail of water. If you move up the ladder, you have at grade 1 a makeshift toilet. This could be a simple hole in the ground toilet, just something that could cost less than 2,000 rupees to build. It could be something as simple as this. And the interesting thing is, people around the world outside of India actually comfortable and okay using something like this. People in the Philippines, where I was working recently, were more than happy to use something like this if they realized that open defecation was not an option. But they couldn't afford a fancier toilet. But in India, we link this to purity. Again, it's supposed to be something that has to do so much with cleanliness that we are not okay with using something like this if we can't afford a toilet. We will either openly defecate, so be at G0, or we will want to jump to G2, which is a really fancy toilet. These are tile toilets, brick walls, proper roof, proper door. We want all of that to be in place, which costs, every little addition costs more. So this costs 11,000 rupees and upwards, depending on just how many features we're adding to that toilet. And then G3 is adding a septic tank, and these toilets can cost upwards to 30,000 rupees. And hence in India, that notion of a toilet is too expensive kind of comes from this. It's not too expensive to build any kind of a toilet. It's too expensive to build the kind of toilet that we want to build. And hence we'll either openly defecate or we will jump to that level. But to jump to that level, it's too expensive. And also it requires us to get over this stigma of culture and disgust that's associated with that toilet that is also very expensive to get over. And it takes time. It will not happen by just giving out and constructing a toilet. Now let's take the case of sanitary napkins. Something else that's been really glamorized today. But toilets and sanitary napkins are actually very, very linked to each other. And how so? We think that women, girls in India today are not using sanitary napkins because it's too expensive. Girls can't afford to buy sanitary napkins today. But is cost the real problem? If you ask a woman today what she prioritizes in her budget list, she'll start saying things like groceries, meri sabjiyan. Then she'll start saying, other kitchen items. Then school supplies for my children, clothes for my children, clothes and items for my husband, maybe clips and jewelry for herself and her daughter. And then maybe if she has some additional money on sanitary napkins. Why? Because she can make do with pads. She can make do with using cloth. And these cloth items, which are not bad, it's not bad to use a cloth on its own, but it's bad if you don't have access to hot water and access to a place to dry it under the sun under UV radiation. And in that case, they still treat pads as an aspirational product, not as a necessity. It doesn't fall under her prioritization list. Now say that she actually has some additional money in a month and she actually fits in pads on that list because it somehow becomes an aspirational product, comes in that list. How does she buy it today in India? Now that's assuming if you have access to a medical shop where you normally buy sanitary napkins. You'll go with a chit of paper, something like this, says packet of 8 pads, or you will send a male member of your family to avoid being so embarrassed. You'll go to a medical store that looks somewhat like this, packed with men, male shopkeeper, male bystanders, male customers, and in front of all of these people, you have to ask and give this chit or ask for a packet of pads where they'll look at you and they'll know that, you have your periods now, which is why you're asking for a packet of pads. The shopkeeper himself will be embarrassed. He'll try to look away from you. And then when he actually hands the packet to you, he'll wrap it up in layers and layers of newspaper, put it in a black polythene bag, and then hand it to you. You'll cover it under the dupatta further, and then look down on the ground and then walk away. Everyone pretends like this incident never happened. All the shame and stigma for what? Had she asked for a bomb? A grenade, maybe? It was something as simple and medical as a band-aid. It was to stop natural blood flow. But she was made to feel stigmatized and victimized for asking something so simple and natural. Of course she'll feel impure. Of course she'll feel like it's her fault. Of course she'll feel small. Giving out a free pad to her is not going to get over that stigma that's associated with it. It will only get over the cost. We need to understand that all of this has to do with health. We need to keep going back and understanding, why are we doing this? Why are we focusing on toilets? Why are we focusing on pads? It's because they have direct health outcomes. But you won't have those health outcomes until you actually use these products and understand their importance in terms of the health language. Not just that we're receiving these pads and we will use them for as long as we receive them. And because we still don't prioritize it, we will remove them from that necessity list and include them as an aspirational product because it still doesn't fit in our budget. Girls now get their periods for 450 times in their lifetime. We get this every month from the age of 9 to the age of 45, for many girls in this case. In such a scenario, girls are essentially told that, well, for the time that you're receiving these free schemes and free pads, you can possibly accept it. But 450 times, do you think is this possible? We need to get over this stigma and this culture that's associated with it for women to really take it on themselves and consider this a priority. Now, the interesting thing is actually how so I founded this organization along with a couple of incredible community leaders called the Maina Mahila Foundation, which is an organization that we have designed to start talking about these issues. It's called Maina because it's the bird that talks a lot like Tota Maina, because we want these women to really understand and get over that stigma. We are using pads not as the end goal, but as a means to start talking about a taboo topic, and that would link to other taboo topics like domestic violence and sexual assault, which are all linked to each other. A woman that opens up about one topic is more likely to start talking about others as well. And it's very important for us to realize all of this in the context of health outcomes again. Health outcomes links to increased attendance, whether it's at work, in school, that leads to increased productivity, and that leads to increased equality in society, where we start to feel like we're equal and we're not small. Another really interesting thing is how all of this is actually linked to each other when we're thinking about the different products. A latrine, sanitary pads, adherence to medications, improved cooking stoves. A woman and a family that prioritizes health and that prioritizes any one of these products is likely to prioritize the others as well. A family that prioritizes a toilet because they understand the importance of this in terms of health outcomes is likely to also use pads, is also likely to adhere to medications, and also likely to use improved cooking stoves. And a family that doesn't prioritize health is unlikely to use any of these items and many more. So by giving any of these items alone for free is not going to induce them to use the other items because they don't see it in terms of their health outcomes. So if you take anything away from this talk, let it be this. Giving out free pads and toilets alone is not the solution to our inherent culture of disgust and shame that surrounds these medical health hygiene topics. We need to change our values, and that change begins with you. Thank you.